and go off camera. So if you can you guys see my screen? Yeah,
Yes.
great. So what we have are the notes from last week that I sent out. Those are on the left-hand side. And last time we talked about PR348, and we had the SNAT DNAT scenario with the use cases from Alibaba. We got most of the way through it, and we had this feedback here that I also sent out in the notes. And then we were going to save a few minutes this week to go over the rest of it. And this is the PR right here. And then if you guys have another PR or something you'd like to cover after that, chime in or let me know in the chat window. I can monitor that while we finish up this one. So does that work for you, Clark?
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Uh,
We should get started. Do you want
okay.
me to keep sharing, Clark, or you want to do it?
Yes. I want to share the
You?
screen.
Okay. All right.
Right.
So it's the up arrow in Teams.
Okay. So I'm sharing this guy. Sharing this one. Okay. Okay. Can you see it? The
I
desktop.
can. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we are trying to. I'm trying to cover the a few uh, comments from the last meeting. First one, I changed a topology connection to the topology according to the suggestions to change the name of the dash device. It's a smart switch rather than the appliance. It's in a prop, it's an in a proper name.
Mm-hmm.
And then I add some label here denoting that the packets between dash device and the VM is VXLAN tunneled packets,
Mm-hmm.
and the internet traffic is IP only. Uh, and this row of the dash device is acting as the net gateway.
Mm-hmm.
This the first change. And then a few. Okay, and then I will show another figure. This we combined. I combined. Okay, sorry, a little bit slow. Oh, it's not. It's not big enough. Can you see
Mm-hmm.
the figure clearly? Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, First, this is a generic net outbound packet processing pipeline combined together, the SNet and DNet. Uh, One different. Uh, this when the packet from the okay, let's start it with the outbound flow. When the outbound flow table is actually one table. Uh, when the VM sends traffic out, it will uh, look up into this table, and if it get hit, it goes through the fast path, and then if the pack if the lookup miss, it will go through the slow path to check the SNet rules, and then we if a hit is uh, if the lookup hits and we select the source IP and port. One clarification here is the port is actually assigned by some algorithm we are running, but we did not show in this uh, diagram because we want to make it more simple. We can uh, take it as it's configured, but it's automatically managed uh, by the by the software or some missing logic here in this. And then we do the VTAP lookup and set up the inbound and outbound flow table. And if we uh, look up into the SNet rule table and miss, and this packet will be dropped. This is any question on this? outbound processing pipe is combined together.
I think I have it.
Okay. And then the next one is the outbound processing. When the internet packet comes in, we look up into the inbound flow table. If we get a hit, and then we do the go through the fast path, replace the desk IP and port and encap VXLAN and do routing and send the packet to the VM. And if the inbound flow table is missed, and then we look up into the SNAT rule table. And then if we get the rule, we search for the VTAP, and then we create inbound flow table and outbound flow table, and then do the rest of the actions in the fast path and send the packet to the VM. And then if we look up into the DNet rules table and get missed, and we drop the packet. And this is overall view combined the SNet and DNet. Any question? This is the this is another suggestion that we should combine this SNet and DNet processing flow together.
Right, that was a suggestion from Gohan last week.
Yeah, it should be more clear. It's yeah, it's more clear.
Gohan, does that satisfy what you were thinking?
Gohan is on
He's
the
on
meeting?
mute. Yeah, he's on mute right now.
Okay.
So I guess we could check with Gohan or Prince.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
All right.
Hey, is your SNAT flow table and DNAT flow table combined or they're separate?
Yeah, actually combined. One table, they're actually one table.
Okay, so then you can rename it just a flow table. Does it matter whether this is inbound flow table versus outbound flow table?
Inbound flow table and outbound flow table.
Are you saying just call it flow table?
Yeah,
Yeah, they're all bidirectional is what he's saying. So you can't have inbound and outbound. They're bidirectional. So it's just a flow table. I think is what he's saying.
Are they bidirectional in your design, or can we confirm that?
No. Yeah, actually here we can see the real table here. It's different because we distinguish the packet direction. So we create two table here. Previously, I mean one table that is SNet and DNet is using one table, but inbound and outbound is different. You can see this picture. Outbound flow table key. This is inbound flow table key.
What's the difference? I couldn't see it. I mean, what is the difference here?
Okay, yeah, it's clear, more clear.
One
is outbound flow table. Outbound flow table, we have inner source IP, DIP, and port and protocol and VNI as the key. And for inbound flow table, we have source IP, desk IP, and these things, but we don't have VNI. And the action is different. Action field. One is rewrite IP and do encapsulation, and another one is rewrite source IP and do decapsulation. They're different.
I guess I didn't quite understand why you need the VNI on your outbound. I thought you guys mentioned that you just differentiate whether it's VXLAN or not, right? So what is What is the significance of the VNI here? What do you use for VNI?
Here we can see, oh, sorry. This one. VNI is to, oh, sorry, let me check it.
Basically, this is for the from the VM to the public side. So VNI will use it to identify which service or what tenant, right? So
Yes.
the IP address might be the same. So that's why you have to have the VNI, because this is the inner IP. The inner IP is basically the tenant IP.
So in this case, isn't that you know, we can introduce some kind of similar concept of ENI and then do the classification, right? So then it would be you know, more similar to the dash pipeline.
Yes, we can do some for it. I updated another place. This is this one, the DNet rules. Actually, this one is similar to ENI concept, but we all, but this is this one. For example, DNet rule, and we can see that the DIP and port is mapping to one VNet and a address, but additionally we have a port here. If ENI identify a VM, and this actually means a certain VMI plus the service port number. Guan, do I understand correctly? This one?
No. I mean, I'm still trying to understand you know, the picture here, right? So, I mean, so in the dash, I think the flow table is bidirectional, right? So, I'm trying to understand, is it possible to make your flow also bidirectional?
Bidirectional.
That's one difference is like in the current dash case, the policy is attached to the VNI. But in our case, we don't have this attached actions. We basically just say this is a global table because we kind of like say this is a gateway, so every traffic will be applied this rule. So this is a global rule, so we don't really need to apply it. So then we don't. That's why we put the VNI as part of the key instead of a cascading lookups there.
Because it's a NAT gateway.
Yeah.
Instead.
No. Let's say for example, for your SNAT use case, right? So if you first have a connection that going out, you know, once you see the connection, do you also create the inbound flow table for the coming, right? So
yes.
The inbound flow table is all global, right? So because it's a global policy, so we don't associate the policy with the VNI. You see, if
no, for your outbound, you have this VNI here, right? So you associate the VNI here.
Yeah, but the thing is like we don't attaching the policy with the VNI. We just say, hey, this is a global, like say, if you see that we have the DNet and the SNet rule, so it's kind of like say the global.
No. I'm okay. So yeah, no, I understand the policy part, but I'm always saying that is it possible that, you know, for the flow table.
For the flow table.
That, yeah, for the flow table that we can you know, adopting the, same model as Dash, right? So then, there can be some kind of a reuse or those things, right? So, yeah.
So then, which means that we need to trigger the VNI lookup first. Then we need to cascading lookups, right? So then we need to organizing the. So then it will be the similar, right? In the sense, it's like if I have two lookups, the VN lookup eventually give me some hint, say which table, flow table. So it will be multiple flow tables, one for each VNI. Or I need to creating the hint to put as a key in the flow table. So then logical is the same as this format.
Mm,
I think currently you will have separate flow table, right? For one for each of the VNI.
yeah. Uh, yeah. Well, no, I think if I understand you know, it just derive a ENI and then, in that, maybe in that the flow table, there is a ENI match as well. I'm not sure, it's, physically it's, uh, uh, maybe the key also have a ENI there. I did, Prince, have we checked our dash? Do we have a ENI in the flow table lookup or?
ENI in the I think so. I
Yes, I
think so.
think the
Yeah.
CT lookup is based on ENI as well.
Okay.
So,
But somehow the inbound doesn't have a ENI, right?
Both directions should have ENI, isn't it?
No, sorry. I mean, yeah, I know ours have, but this
Mhm.
one doesn't have.
Mm.
This one, that's why the lookup key is different, right? So, for the internet, they have no way to know this is which ENI it is. So therefore, it only matches the outer header 5 tuple.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, another key difference, like Guhan, you said, right, about bidirectional flow. In Dash, you basically learn one entry in the flow table, right? And then based on the direction, you can swap the source IP and destination IP, but it's kind of physically one entry. In this case, if when you get the outbound packet, you have to actually learn two different entries in the flow table. They're not the same entry. Dash is different. One entry is only one physical entry, and you swap the destination and source IP based on the lookup, usually based on the implementation. But here they are completely different keys, right? So if you think about the hardware implementation point of view, you have to learn two different keys for like from one packet.
But in Dash, I think also, even though it's a flow entry, but the action would be different, right? So, the inbound versus outbound, I think the action would be different. So I don't know how to differentiate that. But
Okay,
I feel
I got the
like
point.
still there's some difference there in terms of action, right? So, but more my thinking, the reason I'm thinking is, this flow table will have other attributes. For example, the TCP state tracking or the sequence number tracking, right? So all those things might be common. Therefore, I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to unify that. Therefore, whatever developed on the dash, for those other flow state tracking will be reusable, right? So if we don't have that kind of similarity, then you know, s- since it has been developed for Dash wouldn't be uh, useful for this and vice versa, right? So in terms of flow tracking, there's a lot of commonalities there. So therefore, I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to unify. Does it make sense?
You mean to combine more feature in this one?
No, I mean, flow tracking itself is a complex state machine, right? So, for example, you may need to track the full TCP state. You may track the sequence number. You may validate the window size, right? So there's a lot of, different feature associated just with the flow table tracking. But if we can unify, the flow table format between, this one, the dash pipeline, then we can reuse, whatever the feature developed for one project will be reused by the other project, right? So that is my main motivation to get these things unified in terms of flow table. Because one of the key problem for the Dash project is this, the DPU can do stateful things, which means that flow tracking, right? So that's one of the key fundamental feature for this, the Dash project. Therefore, the flow table, I think it's a fundamental feature, fundamental building block that can be reused across multiple, these Dash scenarios.
But
I agree with Gohan, because whatever gets done in Dash will be highly optimized over time, and you want to take advantage of that. You don't want to have a different way of doing things that's not as efficient. You want to reuse as much as possible. There's a lot of companies who are optimizing this right now, and you definitely want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, for example, in the future, HA, right? So the main HA is about the flow table HA, right? So therefore, if we can have a single flow table, modeling, then whatever the HA did in Dash, can be also reused in other project. If we are fundamentally, having some difference in terms of flow table, then, then the work cannot be leveraged, right? So, because I don't know if you guys use HA or not, but, I think HA is a very, very key feature.
we are
For
using HA, but at this moment, HA is handled by the platform, because different platform HA story is different at the moment. So so that'll be very interesting to see that how we could unify all these different approaches, right? Because my understanding is that like a Dash right now is just define the behavior models. So this behavior model may or may not be the real hardware like models, because the hardware could use in P4, could be something else. Their implementation could be different. But just say we just define as a behavior model at this moment. So that's why I would see that if you could combine them, but that's just the software or from the conceptual point of view, that's fine for me.
I mean, that's what we need, right? So I don't know what you mean by behavior. I mean, we define the behavior model, and all the, the DPU vendors that implement Dash will be conformant on that behavior model. That's what we need, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I mean, for HA, I saw, yeah, of course, there's a, difference, but fundamental thing is the flow replication, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, so exactly, right? So that's my point, right? So,
Yeah.
if we can,
Yeah, that's why I'm also like from HA point of view, it just my because my experience like the HA is more like say just to do the state, you are do the flow level sync. You can do the data plan flow sync, you can do the control plan flow sync, but at the end of the day, it just say I need to make sure both sides are in sync. But how do you do that? It's very vendor specific.
no, that I don't think, we have a basic design, right? So, no, the point is that, let's say, on the Dash, they did the HA, the flow sync, right? So then, if they want to onboard on, this scenario, and they also require HA, which requires a flow sync, then, but your flow table is fundamentally different from, their flow table, the dash flow table definition, then they may have to come up with another implementation of the HA, the flow sync, right? So which is not,
No, I don't think so, right? So the flow is the flow, right? The key might be different, but the flow at the end of the day is just entry in the hash table. You're just thinking from that point of view, you're just thinking the hash entries from one side to another side.
No, but you're not using a shared table if you're going to use different key formats, right? You can't just say I'm going to use a different key format and use the same table app. Does that make sense?
Sorry, say again.
You're saying it's the same, but it's not the same. You need a different table because your key format is different.
Yeah. So in this case, I probably was.
Right now we have one table, one flow table.
Okay.
We could combine this into one flow table so it can be shared and have the keys as appropriate. So it's actually, you can separate it, but if it's still one flow table, what you're suggesting here is like having a whole nother flow table, which is separate from the dash flow table, which is not very efficient, by the way. Because
actually,
the flow table is like the largest consumer of all the memory. And you're talking about separating it out into two flow tables, two different types of flow tables.
Yeah, I'm not sure that if you want to sync, say for example, you have like say two features on one car, then you have another two car each have one features. So which means that you will sync that particular table out. So I don't think we will only have one. If we only have one table, then we limit ourselves, right? Say for example, you have one table is for the NAT, another table probably for the Vinny to Vinny. Then my question is like, do you want to make sure that both car must have exactly the same table? Then we pretty much have like I say only one table, or you say I can have A and B combined to do the sync for the NAT and A and C combined for the Vinny to Vinny.
Oh no, okay. I don't think we get to that kind of details right now, right? So I think in general, what I'm saying that the approach, for example, some fundamental approach, it's better to align. So therefore, because the vendor invested a lot, implement the flow table, for flow tracking, because no matter whether it's SNAT or VNet scenario, the fundamental, building block is the flow tracking, the state tracking, the TCP state tracking, or all these things, right? So, but if we I'm not saying that the flow table should have exactly the same match field, same action field, right? So I think that depends on use case by use case. But some fundamental data structure of the flow table, should be aligned. Therefore, the investment of the whole community on Dash can be reused.
I understand that part. That's why I was saying like, have we what's the requirement for the HA at this moment? What we allow that multiple table to do the sync? Because from my point of view, this is the kind of requirement from my side, because we could have different applications running there, then we will have different tables. So then that's why I would say surprised to see to heard like say you can only do the A to B sync, you cannot do the AC sync. So that's my.
What is ABAC sync?
So in the sense, like say, I have one feature because eventually it's a logical table level sync, not a physical table level. So in the sense that like if I have two tables on A, I can do the table one to the A and B with the car B to do the sync. Then table two have A and C to do the sync because of my service could be deployed at different locations. It's very common here. You cannot say, hey, I have to use an A, B for both services, right? So that's why I would say like, if you say the HA can only do one table, then that's a limitation, right?
Oh no, well, I think maybe we're talking different thing. I'm saying that the HA currently the assumption in the flow table is one logical flow table with bidirectional, right? So I think that's a we do not care about how the vendor exactly implement, but logical and the behavior model part, the flow table is one logical table, right?
Yeah.
So currently, I think we're talking about also the behavior model, but it looks like your behavior model is two logical table, right? So
We could have a multiple logical, but it really depends on the services, right? So right now, we only put one NAT at the services out, but internally we could have more. So we will could put other services out as well, but in general, I would say we need to think about how we can make the dash accommodate them, right? So we should not like say dash should be the only model like that, right?
By the way, this is all Dash. I don't know why we keep saying Dash and not Dash. If this goes into this community, it's Dash.
yeah, I agree, right? So it has to collectively to decide how we want to build the infrastructure that support all different scenarios, right? So how do we identify what are the common block that can be used on different scenarios, right?
Yes.
So therefore, when the people working on some fundamental blocks, it can be reused instead of say, okay, yeah, of course, we can also go with the direction saying, okay, let's for each scenario we just define our own pipelines, right? So those things, but then it's going to be a little bit difficult for the vendors to reuse their investment, right? So whatever the engineering investment they did.
I think that's where this is the conversation is going. So let's say Alibaba wants to write some applications even outside of Dash. Okay, that's fine. Anybody can do that. But what we're doing here is we are publishing the behavioral model so that 6 or 8 DPU vendors who have already built like an infrastructure already over the last couple of years, and they want to reuse that. And so when we define something, we're trying to make it easy for all the DPU vendors to be able to go and implement it. So it's not about Alibaba implementing, it's about all the DPU vendors implementing. Each one of them has to go out and implement this feature set, over time. And so that's why you need to reuse, because they spent a lot of time with, as Guan's already mentioned it, connection tracking and flow tracking, all that stuff. They've already spent almost 2 years now optimizing all the time to get the connections per second. You don't want them to go, and you want them to reuse as much as possible, because that was a lot of work to optimize it to get the performance that they're getting. So you want to reuse as much as possible.
I understand that part. So that's why I will say, but my challenging part is like say for example, I could combine this one with the connection tracking, but the question is like say we should not determine the like say whether this is the only model or we can tune it. Because my take is like just let's say, hey, you have a bunch of features. I can select the features based on what my business needs, right? It should not be say, hey, because of the dash, then this is the only model we can use, right? I assume this is the building block. You have just like a Legos, so you can assemble them based on the behavior models. So but it doesn't mean that that's the only way to do that.
But I almost think that we're talking past each other, because this group is defining the common methodologies, right? You can always go out and say, I'm going to add these other things. But in order to add these other things, you'd have to tell the DPU vendors to go and build these other things, which haven't been defined yet.
Yeah.
So you want to be
coming here with
careful.
this is the one our use cases, right? That's the purpose for this meeting, right?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is it's not really, this is Dash. So if it's your use case and you present it to us, then anybody's free to go and use that use case. It's no longer an Alibaba or a Microsoft use case anymore. It's a Dash use case that anybody can use. This looks like a good use case. I'm sure everybody understands that this is a good use case, and it's not like we have never talked about NAT before. But because it will be a fundamental building block, and everybody has to go and implement this over time. Trying to get this common is great. Some things maybe will never make it into Dash because they're very niche and only one DPU vendor does it for one specific customer. Well, that's a niche application that can be done somewhere else.
Mhm.
But this is not a niche application. This is a very actually a kind of a normal cloud application that one would expect.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. So that's why I see like how we can cooperate to move that.
I think especially for this one, right? So the the only thing I think is it looks like is that for your outbound flow you need the VNI. For the inbound flow you don't need the VNI, right? So that's a lookup key things, right? So the action, of course, we also have to differ. In terms of direction, the action will be different. Of course, the action will be different. But I think on the flow tracking, the key side, how can we unify that part?
Guan, in my understanding, if we want some, for example, to unify the flow table, we can do that. But the key will have to expand some of the key or combine these two together to get the most common keys in one flow entry, right? And you put together the two actions and as some control flags to denote that the, this flow entry hit and we should go inbound or outbound direction. And that's I think that should be okay if we want to unify the flow table. This is one point I'm saying, and Eddie actually say that we conceptually we have logical table to sync up or sync up one table or one two table or even more should be the same and consume I think consume almost the same memory. We can discuss that detail, but in conceptually they are making no difference. If we want to unify the table, the flow table, and it's also fine. And in our use case here, because we are acting as a gateway, so we don't care about that from the inbound side, from the packet in from the internet. We don't have any VNI, so we don't want that as the key, and that's why we are organizing the table in this way.
You could though have an ENI, right, on the inbound. For example, like the dip is part of a global address space, right? On the inbound flow.
Mhm.
And like, are those dips, like, I mean, those dips could be like partitioned into ENIs. Like it's possible that the flow lookup in the inbound direction, when it comes without a VXLAN and cap, would require like a dip lookup to determine an ENI and then the flow lookup. So like I definitely think it can be unified. It's a matter of like what do you use for ENI on the inbound flow? You could use just a reserved ENI, or you could do some kind of pre-lookup before the flow lookup.
Yes, you are right. And then that would be some, for example, in our use case, it's not meaningful, right? So we just strip it. If you say, hey, we want to unify the flow table from this perspective, We can add for example, wildcard thing, like like a global one or all zero or anything.
Yep.
That
But
sounds like a
then,
good plan.
but then there's the meaning difference because the one side is only the dip, the other side is in the dip. So because then there'll be some confusing also. So if you want, then the question is, do we want to overload the dip to say, hey, for the outbound, it's inner dip, for the inbound, it's outer dip.
So it sounds like a little bit of confusion versus not having a unified flow table. That's the decision.
I don't think there's any decision here. He's just making a point.
Oh, okay.
Maybe we need to create some kind of indirection, you know, saying, let's say, you can have the lookup here, right? So, based on your, inbound or outbound, you have a different lookup key, but they also they first point into a single flow table, which is bidirectional. And for the dash, it just happened that, we don't have to use two, this lookup to find that flow table, but you have to use, two different sets of lookup key, depending on the direction to find the same flow table. And at least, for the flow table wise, they can maintain a common, data structure for for their tracking purpose, right? So
For the you're talking about the TCP tracking part.
yeah.
Yeah, TCP tracking,
Yeah.
I think it's okay because once you go in, you know the VNI, so that's probably will be shared.
Yeah. Okay, so
But you are not today like a TCP tracking. I assume it's a separate table, right? Not the same table as this flow table, right?
it's in the P4.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't checked that. Rashma, I think Intel did a TCP tracking, right? So do we also have that kind of indirection, or the right? So I think we have one TCP state machine tracking the flow state, right? So
Um, uh, I missed the indirection question, but we have one flow table for the connection tracking that utilizes the TCP states as
Mm-hmm.
well.
yeah.
So Rashma, that will be the separate table, right? It's not
Yeah.
the So in the
A
sense,
separate table.
so it's basically I can just like the Lego block, I can say, hey, do the netting with this table. Then there's another logical table I can employ for the tracking purpose, right?
The NAT will have to be a different table other than the main flow table.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's why I would say like it's more like the Lego, so block.
So then you have this different match, right? So inbound, outbound, but you are going to point into single flow in tray, where on that side you'll have a in out, and then based on the in out you have a different direction, right? So you're not going to bind this action directly to this match, right? So
You mean like for the tracking pair or for what?
for the tracking, right? So
Tracking,
big,
yes.
yeah, right. So then from there, then you can decide whether this is in or out, and then go with different actions, right? So because because you will first use this match lookup to find the flow entry, and then you know then you look up those TCP state, and then after that then you have you derive the direction, and then from the direction you will go with different actions, right? So that sounds like we can reuse basic dash flow, right? So for this purpose.
Why you want to do that? I try to see what's the benefit for that, because the reason is I feel like it's more complicated, right? Because you kind of say, okay, I need to overload this in-cap or netting action to other table, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, because the flow data structure is we have one flow table, right? So then from there, I think we derive those actions, derive the direction, and then go with different actions. I mean, that's how the behavior model defines.
That's why I was saying right now we also define the separate behavior model, right? Then we were reusing whatever we could use. My point is like, say, for example, for the netting case, I may or may not need the tracking. So if some cases I need the tracking, I will enable that as a feature to say cascading the flow table lookups. But if it's the case not, I don't necessarily to enable that, right? So I try to see why we have to get the tracking involved.
So you at least need a basic tracking, like sync package. Then you need the flow timeout, those kind of things, right? So you
That's
don't
really
need.
depend on like say the services, like because it's really depend on like say my customers how they want to put their services onto this platform, right? So I was just providing bunch of the building blocks. They will decide to say what they do. That's why I would kind of like say I don't want to mix all these pieces together, because then I kind of force my side to say, hey, you have to do that.
I think it just deviates from the dash model at that point.
Yes.
You don't need the flow timeout. Sorry, I didn't get that part.
I need the flow timeout, but then not necessarily on the tracking timeout, right?
You don't need like quickly to time out your flow if you have received the SYN packet. SYN packet.
That depends on some use cases, right?
So you don't
I mean,
mean,
like some cases
you don't want to efficiently use your flow table because you have millions of flows. They come and go quickly, and then if you don't, time out your flows as quickly as possible, you may run out of those flow table entries, right? So
yeah, that's in the million flows, yes. But sometimes I may have a simple flows, right? Then I got not necessary to have it, because sometimes in some cases my flow table might be static. That's also possible. So it's really depend on use case, because it's really depend on where I deploy this NAT scenario as a box. If, if I put it on the edge where I want my customer just get on the cloud, then their traffic is well known. So I can define very simple rules. But if I on the border of the like a public cloud, then I won't be able to control. Then I agree with you. So it's meaningless flows. That's why I say tracking may or may not depend on the use case.
Yeah. Okay. So I think maybe we're all here trying to help, right? So
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So
I think it's fundamentally right. So this use case, people want to. I guess from the vendor's point of view, many of the vendors doing the work, right? So therefore, um, they want to. My impression, they want to see a more unified approach, so they can implement once and then be able to tap on different use cases. That's why they are here. That's why we build the community.
okay, so I'm gonna do a time check. We have 6 minutes left. It sounds like we have a flow lookup question or more discussion here. Do we want to take this back into Alibaba, or what do we want to do here, Eddie and Clark?
Yeah, we may discuss later, or
Okay.
if we are combining this together. Yeah. One more.
I can
One more
provide
thing.
more pointers to our documentation too if we need that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And another change I want to mention is that I changed the DNet rule format, so it's more easier for you to understand how the DNet goes. For example, this part is for clarification. This one, right?
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
saw that.
Previously, yeah, when the internet traffic. Okay, this is the first one, right? Okay, first one. So here we can see how previously we have this VNet. How to obtain the VNet, right? The
Yeah,
question
that
is
was a question in the
yes,
from the previous
yeah,
discussion. Yeah.
and we changed this. Okay, in which one, right? We changed
And
the
now I think you made it a global table, right? So there's no
yeah.
VNet. But I think based on today's discussion and also what John was also mentioning, I believe if we can make it as an ENI based, then I think it will become more
Okay, yeah.
standardized. Yeah.
Okay, ENI base. Yeah, I think it's okay. It's okay for especially this one. These two combined together. I will check the ENI definition and use that way to for this to change this table organization, right? That's okay. I will do it later after this meeting.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yep, we have
Okay.
plenty of time. Yep.
Yeah. That's almost all the changes in this HLD today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that's a huge amount of work. We really appreciate it. And thank you everyone on the call for the discussion and the contributions. Reshma, John, everyone on the call. Gerald, guess I'll give 3 minutes back.
Okay.
And I'm going to stop the recording. And thank you for the thought on this, Alibaba.